Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today, my groups will present about the Chernobyl disaster. So, this is my group mate. The first member is me, Muhammad Fauzan Shafi bin Muhammad Fodi, and the second one is Muhammad Naufal bin Salim. The third one is Muhammad Zarif Hazim bin Kamaruzaman, and the last one is Rahman Hamimi bin Hamid bin Abdul Hamid. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Fauzan Shafi bin Muhammad Fodi, and today I will present to you about the introduction of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. So, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant is located near the abandoned city of Pripyat in northern Ukraine and is a nuclear power plant that is undergoing the decommissioning. So, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant consists of four RBMK 1000 reactors, which RBMK is a class of the graphite moderate nuclear power reactor that is designed and built by the Soviet Union. The construction of the station concluded in the 1970s with a reactor number 1 commissioning in 1977. It was the third Soviet RBMK nuclear power plant that after the Leningrad nuclear power plant and the Kursk nuclear power plant, and is the first power plant in the Ukraine soil. So the completion of the first reactor in 1977 was followed by the reactor number 2 in 1978, number 3 in 1981, and number 4 in 1983. There are two more blocks, number 5 and 6, that are same reactor design, were planned at the site of roughly a kilometer from the contiguous building of the four older blocks. But after the aftermath of the disaster, the construction of number 5 and 6 was suspended and eventually cancelled in 1989. So, the design of the electric system is the power plant that is connected to the electrical grid, and the block has two electrical generators that connected by a single generator transformed by the two switch in series. Between them, the unit transformer are connected to supply power to the power plant system. The plant was powered by its own generator or from the other plant blocks via the two reserve bus bar. It is in case of a total external power loss, the essential system could be powered up by the diesel generators. Next is a design for the turbo generators. Turbo generators is an electrical energy that generated by a pair of hydrogen-cooled turbo generators. The turbine and the generator's rotors are mounted on the same shaft with a combined weight of the rotors is almost 200 tons, and their speed is 3,000 revolutions per minute. The generator stator is cooled by water, while its rotor is cooled by the hydrogen. The hydrogen is for the generators is manufactured on site by electrolysis. So power the Chernobyl plant was equipped with both type of turbines, with with the Block 4 have the newer ones that invented by the Carvis turbine plant in attempt to reduce the use of the valuable metal. But however, the newer turbines turned out to be more sensitive to their operating parameters, and their bearing had frequent problems with vibrations. And for the last design for the computer system. The computer system for Chernobyl nuclear power plant is SCALA, which is control system of the device of the Leningrad nuclear power plant. It is a process computer for the RBMK nuclear reactor at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant prior to October 1995. The Scala monitored and record the reactor conditions and control all the board inputs. It was wired to accept about 7,200 analog signal and 6,500 digital signals. So, lastly is the hazard associated with this work. First of all, the first one is the nuclear hazard. It is involving the accidental or intentional release of the potential harmful radioactive materials. For instance, from the nuclear power plants research reactors or nuclear weapons. The second one is the radiological hazards. It is occur when the radioactive material is used in industry. So that's all for me. Now I will pass it to the next presenter. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today, I, Muhammad Naufal bin Salim, will present to you on the accident reporting of the Chernobyl accident. Before the accident occurs, there was a safety test, a faulty one. The safety test was to the function of the safety test is to measure the amount of power needed for the nuclear reactor, which is generally around 1000 megawatt. But in this test, it was faulty. They gain around 700 to 200 megawatt, which is substantially lower than they needed. Even though they had a a lower power for the nuclear reactor, they continued the experiments, which in result, which in that case, the core's average temperature was condensed because it was decreased due to the coolant flow increasing. This can cause damage, such as explosion and nuclear fallout, which affects the people around Ukraine, or Pripyat specifically. Then there was a reactor shutdown, which is the scram or the emergency button, also known as a Z5 button. The button was hit. Then there was the starting process of inserting control rods into the reactor core of the RMBK control rods. But they have a graphite neutron moderator section connected to it, and to increase reactor output by displaced water when the control line section had been fully removed from the reactor. The reactor's output reached 530 megawatt in 3 seconds. As a result, this causes an explosion, a steam explosion, and a nuclear fallout. Then there was a steam explosion. The steam explosion is occurred because the reactor output increased during the scram to around 30,000 megawatt thermal, which is 10 times as typical operational output as seen by the last reading on the power meter on the control panel. This explosion is similar to a steam boiler exploding from excessive vapor pressure. As a result of this explosion, the remaining coolant stashed to steam and exited the reactor core, which also severed the majority of the coolant lines supplying the reactor chamber and further ruptured the fuel channels. There were also a second more powerful explosion that scattered the damage and causes nuclear chain reaction. As a result, this causes a nuclear fallout, which scattered around Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. This happens because the reactor containment vessel was further damaged by the explosion. Then, hot chunks of graphite moderator were also released. As a result, when exposed to air, the expelled graphite and the destroyed channels still present in the reactor vessels remnant caught fire, greatly aiding in the spread of radioactive fallout and contaminating nearby areas, which causes a lot of death and gives radiation sickness that can cause cancer. As a result, a total around 237 workers were hospitalized because of the radiation sickness. Within 3 months, around 28 people died because of ARS, also known as acute radiation syndrome. And that's all for me. I will pass this presentation to my friend. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Azhar Hazim bin Kamal Zaman, and I'm going to present about the impact from this disaster. There were two consequences that happens in the disaster, which is impacts to the environment and impact to the society and health. First of all, there was an impact on environment from the disaster that occurred, which is the radioactive pollution. From the pollution, the radionuclides that deposited from the explosion were migrated to the soil and also affecting the water body. It causes biological disturbances, which the plants, soils, and invertebrates were having a hard time and died from the exposure of the radionuclides. With that said, for the plants and animals that survive from the radiation may have their genetics affected from the radiation. On the other hand, for the impacts to the society and health, the evacuation was happened immediately after the tragedy happens, and living from 30 kilometers square of the Chernobyl, and the Chernobyl today is still inhabited by humans. There were two terms that appeared from disaster that affecting health. For the short terms, the people were experiencing cataracts and radiation illness from the exposure of radiation. In the first 3 months, 28 workers were passed away from the radiation illness. For the long-term effects, the benign diseases appear after the long exposure of radiation to the people, which is leukemia and thyroid cancer. The children were the ones that affected by thyroid cancer the most, since the dairy products such as milk that has been contaminated by the radiation. More than 6,000 cases were reported about the disease, and at least 9 of these cases were fatal because of the high exposure of the radiation. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Rahman and I will present to you about the conclusion of this study. So, based on the study, there are two factors for illness and injuries in workplace, which is first, poor or non-existent occupational safety and health management system. The other one is poor design and technical process that was extremely risky. So, based on that two factors, the law enforcement and inspection system on nuclear plant and operation are different than the old days. Other than that, they hire employees in safety procedures through training, education, information, and involvement. That is all from me.